そう信じて進もう。
Damn, this was really good, although, it's an obvious reset since this is far from an actual ending, but I just love cliffhangers. I give this show a 7 out of 10. This story started off. Yeah, you heard it right. Like it tried to show what a normal day is like for our protagonist, even though they tried to be mysterious in the first minute of the show. Like, the thing is that unlike television, most of the audience nowadays already get an idea as to what the show is about just by seeing the cover, and a lot would actually read the synopsis as well, so the introduction just seems long-winded than it actually needs to be, but let's assume that TV is still a thing, okay. So you see Shuaki Kaguya in school enjoying himself with his friends. He is smart, timid, but he gets along well with a lot of people. After the skies of a normal school day, he noticed that there's a fire at a distance. Instead of calling 911, or in this universe it's 119, he rushes off to the scene and tries to assess the situation. So I'm like, hey, this guy is actually brave, and after sensing that this girl was in the middle of the burning building, he suddenly transforms into this furry monster. This, my friends, is what we call a bad introduction. There was little to no signs that he already had his power, like sure you can assume that the first few minutes was him all along, spoiler alert. It actually was him, but the writers deliberately used a first-person point of view to hide who this desperate person was, and it will make sense later on. There was no significant foreshadowing in his normal day that he had such a problem. Like not accepting a scholarship to some college is not enough of a sign that something is wrong in his life, and to some degree he can actually control his powers, which doesn't make sense from the get-go. So the way the scenes were mashed together in the first half of the episode would most likely make us assume that he got his power the night before, and somehow had the time to get used to transforming, which then we expect for him to save the girl flawlessly since he went to the scene as if he could actually do something, but then he was actually still in the process of controlling his furry body, so maybe the writers tried to make up for the fact that there was no training montage prior to this. And you know what this reminds me of? Game of Thrones. It's subversion for the sake of subversion. It's not really good to overload the audience with a bunch of surprises. It's the same problem that horror game devs are facing at the moment. The more jump scares a game has, the less likely it's gonna work for the 10th time it happens. Thankfully this mistake doesn't perpetuate further on, after the heroine was introduced. Now Claire Aoki really saved the show for me. Shuaki as the main protagonist alone was kinda underwhelming. She's proactive, clever, and her will to do whatever it takes in accomplishing her goal was captivating to see. Surprisingly, despite having a rough start, the pacing was really good, and there's a balance between Claire driving the direction of the story and the story pushing them towards the epicenter of the plot. Like everything was still a mystery until the 4th episode explained some things, so no matter how much determination she has, she still had no idea as to what is going on. And it was the same for Shuaki as well. Claire's goal is actually finding her sister, Elena, which also turned into a monster and allegedly killed their parents. After confirming that she was actually not crazy due to finding out Chichi's predicament, they set their sights on looking for the truth. Of course for Claire it's actually about revenge, but for Shuaki, it's information. It was so good that the writers didn't waste time and revealed Elena early on. They could have easily made a full arc of just them looking for her, but this scene was so needed. I was like, holy fuck. Now that's a Yandere, and it also increased the stakes. The action from the 2nd episode was great and all, but if they kept on winning battles, without resolving their respective weaknesses, then that would have made them into Mr. and Mrs. Gary Stu. With this it establishes that the struggle in their journey is real, and if they do something stupid there are actually consequences. So later on, they found out that aliens were real, and people with powers have actually met this guy at some point of their lives. For now let's call him Alien. So Alien grants powers to those who give him a special coin that can only be found in this town. Those coins were apparently his colleagues, and their ship crashed in the middle of some forest. The story is simple, yet it actually adds to the mystery of his existence, which is so intriguing. Even though our heroes failed in their first goal with Elena, the new information they got with Alien gave them something much grander to set their sights on. Alien suggests that he'll grant someone an ability that could potentially destroy the world to whoever collects 100 coins, but the story is also implying that if it's in the hands of someone who doesn't want to do so, then everything will be fine. So instead of enacting revenge and finding the truth about everything, this now became a race against time to save the world. When they ventured to the forest, they found out that Elena was not the only overpowered monster out there. So it became so cool that they were able to improve in terms of wits as they faced a stronger opponent. Other animes have this format of constantly adding newer and more powerful abilities to their characters out of nowhere, and later on Shuaki will be given the same treatment, but the power creep is at least not as fast and numerous. Like the gun is not the most powerful weapon in this world, but you can get the idea that it's not a normal gun and that it can kill the average person with just recoil alone. The suit can be torn apart, and just because they're in their monster form there are still things that could actually kill them, like even poisoning works. This also makes the appeal on collecting 100 coins, because when you think about it, if you have at least 50 monsters at your beck and call, why doesn't the antagonists just pursue their goal of doing whatever they want to be happy, if they could achieve it without collecting all those coins? The answer is that the story successfully established the limitations in its world. Unfortunately, for binge watchers out there, this ended on an awesome cliffhanger. Everything made sense now that Shuaki actually lost his memories. This is why you should give things a chance rather than dropping them from the start. So the introduction was made that way. It is due to Shuaki's predicament. This makes it easier to sympathize with him while enduring the cringe that he sometimes spews every now and then. Realizing that he might actually be the solution to everyone's problems, it makes you question as to why he has to lose his memories. As of now it's not clear and the manga is still ongoing, but long story short, it has something to do with the main antagonist's wish, and if he does get his memories back, he'll get Thanos snapped out of nowhere. So it's kinda mediocre that Elena had to erase his memories again in the anime, but it made sense. More answers will come out as they go deeper into the forest, but that's for another season. All in all, the story was so good. If they keep the pace as is in the second season, then there'll be no problems. Like, it was amazing how they inserted a beach scene in the middle of the forest. Yet it's not in the beach, but scenes like these are actually fillers that try to accommodate the season at the time the show was aired. The visuals were amazing. Well, there's no doubt that eki animes would try their best to please the eyes, but even the gore and the scenery itself looks good while keeping lines and textures clean. The music could have been better. I've said this too many times in my reviews, but when I say it, I meant it, and besides, if there's no new music out there that fits the theme of the show well, then they should at least consider using old music from other animes, unless it's just way too expensive to do so, then I guess it's understandable. Like Boku Daikji and Amaki, for example, used an old song for their opening, although that might be one of the many reasons as to why the price was off the roof when it was still new.
Now these 2 volumes cost me $187. That's insane.
The characters were great as well. The protagonists might be too flawed for their own good, but they actually complement each other. Even the side characters have depth, and I like how the antagonists belong to the gray area of the spectrum, rather than just making them the incarnate of pure evil. Of course, when that big bad boss prioritized saving his crew before himself, it was still subversion for the sake of subversion, but if he acted selfishly, then it would just be another cliché for a bad guy to run away and enact his revenge later on. This one, however, was actually a really creative way of defeating another strong opponent, and it's kinda realistic. Like, I'm assuming that even the mafia or some gangs that do illegal shit would still try to look out for each other when push comes to shove. Like, maybe acts like these are the reason why some groups with questionable moral compasses could have bonds that would last a lifetime or two. I think it would have been much better if they just made 20+ episodes instead of cutting things short with 13 episodes, just to restart everything on the second season, but with the Kuf still around, it's understandable for studios to not push their luck and drain resources on one show. Well, I hope you enjoyed Gleipnir as much as I did. It's still in its first season, so this rating might increase or decrease, depending on how the story actually ends. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.